Welcome again to our show, Women to Women. It's so nice to have you with us this evening. We have always a very special guest with us. Her name is Lynne Shull, and you're going to meet her in just a moment. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Carpa Nevada LLC, importers of fine Portuguese olive oil, international teas, and balsamic vinegar, as well as Pete's Villa Basque Deli and Cafe, home of Pete's famous Basque chorizo. So we thank them, and we turn right now our attention to Lynne Shull. Lynne, thank you so much for coming. It's wonderful to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Lynne, we always have special stories, special surprises in our lives, okay, to share. And I just want you to know, as well as our television audience, that this is a show that supports women. Regardless of our circumstances, regardless of our ages, regardless of our levels of education or our levels of experience, these are women who every week come together to share their lives, to let you know, and they also let me know as well, never give up. Never give up. There is always power in our lives, there's purpose in our lives, and whether we started at 14 years of age, whether we started at 42 or 84, there is purpose. So most of the women who come on here represent solid experience, solid communication skills in working with people, and they have learned lessons that they're going to share with me and with you as well, lessons that have opened doors for them in their lifetime, lessons that have made a difference in who they are as a person. So that's why Lynne is here. She's one of those many women who make a difference, not only in Carson City and in the Reno area, but in northern Nevada itself. So that's why it's such a pleasure to have her on. Lynne, help us understand, first of all, where are you from originally?
Originally, I was born in Pueblo, Colorado, and raised in Denver.
A true Westerner. Mm-hmm. How did you get to Nevada?
My father opened up a nightclub up at the lake.
Lake Tahoe.
And so my brother and sister and I all decided to come and work for him and help him out. So we all moved to Tahoe.
So that really says that you were a pretty united family.
Yes.
Okay, and in this day and age, that's very special to be able to say that, because there's a lot of dysfunctionalism out there with our families, with us as individuals. So right there, there's a solidarity point to work from as a child of that family. Now, when you were growing up, you have a brother and you have a sister, okay? In the pecking order, are you the oldest?
I'm in the middle.
Middle, and
Yes.
Middle children do have distinguishing characteristics from the oldest and from the youngest. You really had to learn to get along with two different personalities, and you're stuck in between, okay?
Yeah.
What was life like growing up when you were a child, let's say in Colorado to begin with?
Well,
What do you remember from your childhood?
I remember my grandfather was very special in my life, and I was a tomboy, really bad.
Now, what do you mean by that?
I didn't like to play with dolls. I didn't like
Okay.
to put dresses on. I liked to climb trees and play in the mud and play baseball and football. And
Good.
I
Okay.
was very athletic.
Right.
So my grandfather, he taught me how to fish, how to shoot a gun, how to ride a motorcycle, how to play pool, all the fun things that at that time women didn't do.
But he was
girls
getting you ready for the nightclub life that your father's going to... That's going to come in handy. We're going to find out.
Yeah, he toughened me up. He did.
He toughened you up. Okay, and that's kind of an important characteristic. Women sometimes are perceived as very gentle, soft, highly moldable characters. And there is a toughness that we have to develop. I remember often my mother saying, Carol, you wear your heart on your sleeve. Everybody knows how to get to you. What did you learn in your childhood? Okay, your grandfather taught you some toughness. Did your brother receive that pretty well? That training?
Brother?
Your brother. Is your brother the oldest or the youngest?
He's the youngest.
Ah.
So my sister was like the mother.
Yes.
My brother was the baby.
Okay.
And since I was such a tomboy, I was almost like his bigger brother rather than his bigger sister.
Yes.
So I taught him a lot as far as all the guy stuff.
Okay. Can you remember anything to this day that your brother might say to you today? Lynne, I've got to thank you for this. What would he say, do you think? Where in life did
Wow.
some of your work, some of your playtime with him, some of your time spent with him as a younger child, in this case a younger brother, where did it pay off for him, do you think?
Well,
Would he give you any
he never
credit
had
at
to
all?
learn how to, he never had to learn how to fight, because if someone was giving him a hard time, I would go take care of it for him. And so he didn't have to fight when he was a little boy.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but
But he must have seen, he must have learned some actions, behaviors, even some words, but there's a sense of toughness that came from you.
yes.
Okay,
Yes.
all right. So let's move on. When you come into Nevada, what were your responsibilities and what were your sister's responsibilities, your brothers, when your father opened, did you say a nightclub? Okay, what was that like?
Well, my sister worked in the office. I started out as a cocktail waitress. My brother, he came up a little bit later and opened up like a gift shop
Okay.
as part of it, like souvenirs and that
Yes,
kind of thing.
responsible for the inventory there,
Right.
taking in of cash, etc. And you,
I was cocktail waitress, and then I started bartending.
okay, and that's kind of perceived as a man's job, bartending in itself. Now there's a special, what should I say, period of time that you need to learn names of drinks, mixes of drinks, and how to handle customers, right? So again, this is in preparation, I'm thinking, towards what you now do. What did you learn tending bar?
I learned don't argue with the drunk because you don't get anywhere.
Right?
I learned, you need to stand up for yourself, and you were responsible for their well-being
While they're there.
while they're there.
Yes.
So, you had to know when was enough, and
Yes.
you had to be able to handle yourself, because when you tell them it's enough, they don't think so.
That's right.
And so you really have to learn how to negotiate and do things in a creative way to get the results you need.
To get their cooperation with you. And that also speaks, Lynn, of the trust that your father had in you. That's a difficult position to hold, because sometimes it takes a muscular, sometimes a rather threatening appearance. And yet bartenders, I don't know, I'm really not a drinker, I'm not a bar associate, but I've seen enough movies, okay? I've seen enough tough guys that you can talk the ear off of a bartender, like in Cheers, okay, the television program. And at the same time, your skills of negotiation for cooperation are all important, because it can save a police arrival, it can save a fight arrival. So I would say that you're a pretty intelligent lady with all of that going on.
Well, in a way, I think it's easier for me than it would be for a man, because especially if it's a male that is causing troubles or whatever. And I find this where I'm at now, that if I approach them and just start talking to them very casually, and I'm not threatening, I get a lot more cooperation than if a guy is all pumped up and goes over and says, this is how it is, because then they get defensive, and you got to save face. So, I give them the opportunity to not be embarrassed, or, to save face.
Did you ever feel during this period of your life, during this phase of your life, that your tomboyishness, your skills, negotiating skills as the middle child, because when you are in the middle child position, you have an older sibling, in this case a sister, and you said that she was more like the mothering type. So that's a special relationship there. And then just the fact that your brother was the younger one, the baby of the family, there's a protectiveness that comes from you, the middle child, as well as from the oldest child. Do you feel that the oldest child, your sister, influenced you as well?
She did. To be honest, we were kind of
butting heads.
We were
from time
butting
to time?
heads a lot. We were the opposite. She was very girly. She
Okay.
loved dolls. She loved mothering. She loved all of that. She never got in trouble, and I was a little troublemaker. And
At school and elsewhere.
And I would take my brother with me everywhere I went, and he'd get in trouble too. So,
Yes.
yeah.
I can remember having that same. Now, I was the oldest in our family of 2 girls, but we had a much older brother who was 14 years. So he was kind of out of our life when we got to be old enough at 6, 7, and 8 to appreciate having an older sibling. So I found myself in kind of a awkward but unique position as the middle child. Protector of my sister, negotiator for my sister with my older brother, and vice versa. But one day I had to really pummel a little boy who came into our yard and kicked my leaf house and my sister's leaf house all to pieces. And I had to take care of business. And my mother was aghast. She said, "Where did that come out of you?" But as a middle child, and as maybe the more assertive one, sometimes you have to take care of business. And nobody messed with me again, okay? At least not in our backyard. So let's move forward. Okay. How many years did your father have a nightclub?
I believe about 8 years.
In that time, you were probably around what age?
I was in I started out in my early 20s.
At that time, Lake Tahoe was probably different than it is today. How so?
It's grown a lot.
What about celebrities?
Well, yeah, celebrities, we would get some of those in. That was always fun. I remember the San Francisco, was it the 49ers? When they made...
Montana?
They, was it them that had the Super Bowl?
Yes.
They won the Super Bowl?
Yes.
They all showed up.
And Joe Montana had to be amongst them.
Yeah, right after they did that. And so that was exciting.
Absolutely.
It took about 10 minutes for the whole town to know where they were. So that was fun.
Okay.
I used to hang out with Sammy Davis Jr.'s adopted son. He was a friend of mine.
Okay, was that during the time he was married to Mae Britt?
I don't know.
Okay,
I don't
but he had an adopted son.
Actually, he had 2 adopted sons.
All right, okay.
Yeah, he wasn't, I think he was gone by that time. He passed on.
All right. Did you ever see any of the rest of the Rat Pack that came with him from time to time?
No.
No, okay. He was quite a personality, gifted entertainer in so many different ways. So did you have to change in any way your personality or your behaviors when celebrities came in? Was there more pressure on you?
Yeah, there was more pressure. There was more security. We had to figure out what they wanted, how they wanted it. Was it okay for other people to approach them or not? That kind of thing. And, they definitely got the best service.
And I'm thinking that your listening skills had to be really fine-toned to them, because you have to hear quickly and effectively what they're asking for, what they need to be supplied, with in terms of security, and you're having to make some pretty sound decisions, business decisions at the same time. Which brings us to the point, what are you doing now?
I am the client services manager at Fish here in Carson City.
What does that mean?
Fish is Friends in Service Helping, and that means I supervise the information and referral program, which is when people come into Fish, the first people that they sit down and talk to are in the program that I supervise. We figure out what's going on with the client, what they need, and then if they need vouchers or shelter or food or whatever the case may be, then they can start that process.
All right, so before we get into that, this has to be a position with Fish. It's a community organization that serves Carson City. And I have some familiarity with Fish from other communities. So when clients come to you, they come to you with a series of serious problems.
Yes.
Okay. And you have to recognize not only what their problem is, but how deep into that problem they may be, correct? And where do you start with them? Some of those initial appearances, some of those initial listening skills initial evaluation skills that you learned as a bartender, as a family member of a business at Lake Tahoe, and as a assertive person in your childhood, all come into play. And let me just ask you before we take a break, if I ask you to think of one lesson right now that comes to mind that your past helped you with as a client service manager, what would one lesson be right now that you can think of that you really apply carefully?
I would say listen to my gut.
Gut instinct. And women have to go on that a lot. I imagine men too. But sometimes that gut instinct is that extra sense of perception that God has given us as women. We'll be right back to find out what you do with that gut instinct in just a second. Okay, please don't go away. We'll be right back. Thank you.
How was school today?
Cool, we learned what to do in case there's an emergency.
Oh, will you show me?
If there is an earthquake, then you get under your desk, duck, cover, and hold. And when the shaking stops,
we evacuate the school just like a fire drill.
I'm glad you both know what to do in case of an emergency, but I'd still be worried.
check the phone, radio, or TV, and they'll tell you what to do.
Make a plan.
Assemble a kit.
Stay informed.
And be ready.
Come into Villa Basque Deli and Cafe right here in Carson City, Nevada. Discover fine Portuguese extra virgin olive oils, vintage balsamic vinegars, and a wide assortment of international health teas provided by distributor Carpa Nevada LLC. In addition to these terrific items, Villa Basque is also the home of Pete's famous Basque chorizo, handmade on the premises from Pete's secret family recipe. Satisfy your culinary curiosities. Don't delay.
Welcome back. So good to have you. Lynne Shull is with us, and she's not only a terrific lady, she has a terrific story. And in the second part, she has agreed to share with us, which I think is unusual, but it's very special because we've had other women who've shared this type of a background, and it's made a difference for you listeners. So stick right with us. Lynne, you were talking about a gut instinct that's very important for women to have, and I agree with you completely. So when you are client manager, client service manager, you come into contact with a lot of issues from clients. Some of those issues are what?
Homelessness, people that are hungry, people that need clothing, need showers, need to do their laundry, need
protection sometimes? Okay. Now, your communication skills are excellent. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in the position that you're in. So my question to you is this. Can someone like myself or someone like you, the better candidate I think would be you, because I have certain gifts or certain things of talking with people as a teacher. But if I were in need of protection, if I were in need of shelter, if I'm in need of food, if I'm homeless, I'm going to come to someone like you rather than depend upon myself to win those battles. I can't. How is it that you have such a good communication level with these people? What happens? Why you, not me?
because I've been there.
You've been there.
I've been there.
What do you mean by that?
I'm a recovering cocaine addict. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I've been homeless.
And you look wonderful.
Thank you. I've come a long way. Last Sunday was my 18th birthday for sobriety. Thank you. Yes.
I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
Now, wow. Where do I start with that kind of a gift that you've just given us? All right. What in your life, what brought you to a point of absolutely crying out for help?
Well, I had been drinking. I started drinking when I was 14. And I knew I was kind of different than everybody else because I would never, ever dream of leaving a half a drink sitting on the table and walking away. And so I always kind of wondered about that, and then it just got worse and got worse and got worse.
But you were aware of it.
But I was aware of it.
Yes.
And then I learned about cocaine. A guy I was dating introduced me to it, and I loved it.
At what age would this be?
That was at about 25.
Okay,
26.
quite some time later in your life, quite some time later.
Yeah, I got clean and sober when I was 33. But the last 2 years, I locked myself up in a house up in Tahoe. I had a roommate. He was my supplier, I guess you could say. And he took care of the groceries. He took care of everything outside. I never left the house.
Now, sometimes we call that agoraphobia, fear of going out. Was that a part of your situation?
It was just the natural paranoia that you get with cocaine.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
And I could swear that the cops were outside in the bushes every time I looked out the window. I knew they were out there 24/7 just waiting for me to come out the door. I was very, very sick.
Yes.
And so finally I got to the point where I hit my knees. I never knew if there was a God or not, but for sure. But this day I got to the point where I hit my knees. I got down on the floor on my knees, and I said, if there's a God, either kill me or help
Restore me. Help me.
because I can't keep going like this.
And you found out what kind of God is it?
And then 2 days later, my family did an intervention on me.
Wow.
They tricked me to go down to Gardnerville to my sister's house and basically said, you know, they blackmailed me every way they could. And,
Because they loved you.
Yes.
Yes.
And they got me into treatment. And I am one of the few very blessed people that treatment worked for me, and I never relapsed.
And you have such beautiful skin, beautiful eyes, beautiful appearance, that one would never know that you had been through any of that.
I have a picture of that was taken the day I went into treatment, and I show it when I do the life skills classes at the shelters, because that's another part of my job is I manage I supervise the shelters, and I go and do life skills classes for them, and I show them that picture because I want them to see this is who I was.
Yes.
And it's not who I am today. It's
Not at
two
all.
totally different people, and a lot of people don't even recognize me. I showed the picture to coworkers, and they said, no, this isn't you. And I asked them, do you know who this is? Have you seen this person? And they're like, well, I'm not sure. I don't think so. And they had no idea it was me.
And you know, Lynne, this is a very strong, not only testimony by you, but it's a strong realization that you're passing on to others, that it can be done.
Yes.
But we can't do it on our own.
No.
We need to seek help. I'm about to ask you a question, which you can decide if you want to answer it or not. But sometimes you said you began to realize that drink at 14 was becoming a part of your life. Can you go back in your memory now and think, now I think there was a reason why I turned to a form of alcohol, because it helped me to either forget about or feel better about or just not have to deal with another issue in my life. Are you able to answer that?
Yeah, there were a lot of issues. I always felt different from other people, but I didn't know why. And I knew when I was drinking, when I would get drunk, I felt normal. But also, my mother divorced and remarried an alcoholic and a very violent man. And so we were living in a household with domestic violence. We knew, I could tell the second the man walked in the door at the end of the day, is this a day to go up and say, hi, Daddy, how was your day? Or is it a day to go up to your room and just be quiet? You could tell by the look in his eye, his body language, the tone of his voice, you knew instantly.
And children are so sensitive to that, because as a teacher with children who came from some violent backgrounds, not themselves, but parents, parental violence, they look for areas of security. They look for behaviors of security. So taking that, you came out of a childhood with not only a lot of issues, but you had to look for protection for yourself, for your younger brother, for your older sister. And because you were assertive, you may have felt even more pressure on you, even more responsibility on you to find a way to help. Now, have you found that those very unique and painful backgrounds have been a help in serving others in your capacity at Fish?
Absolutely. Because I know, I've been there. I know what they're feeling. I know what their struggles are. I know their fears.
Okay.
I know how it feels to live in a war. I mean, I describe it as a war zone because basically that's what it is.
It certainly is a psychological war zone, as well as a mental, and often emotional, and it can be physical.
Yes.
It can be physical. I would imagine that because of your experiences as a child and as a young woman, it would be very difficult for them to lie to you.
Yeah. They try, though. A lot of them try, but yeah.
Do you think that's still a part of the denial program that they're personally dealing with?
Yeah, and also, I know when I was drinking, and I was just trying to survive, manipulation was my biggest
Asset.
gift. Yes. I could manipulate somebody like you wouldn't believe, and my boss probably tell you I still do it.
It's hard to break old habits.
Yeah, so, well, you know. So.
But, Lynne, there are two sides to that coin. You're saying, okay, on one side of the coin is manipulation, which is usually a negative connotation. And on the other side, it's been turned into encouragement now in a brand new life, clean life.
Yeah.
And they can't manipulate you any longer.
No.
You see through that, guys. You see through that deceit and trickery. And you bring them around to taking a look at, okay, it's not the end of the road. There is hope. And this is the encouragement that you've turned from a negative and you've turned it into a positive. So usually when there is one negative gift, or I don't believe that God gives us negativity at all. He gives us only positiveness. But as humans, we can skillfully turn our gifts that have been given to us into commodities that don't help us, that can get us into trouble. And it's when we come to realize that we need help and that we want help that we start taking a look at a healthier side of the coin.
Right.
Lynne, you're a fascinating character. And I applaud you because you are making a difference in lives. Right now, I have the notion in me, I want to invite you back, for more.
Okay.
But if we leave this program right now, I'd like to have you just address that listening audience out there in the sense that why should we not live in fear? Why should we not let fears conquer us as a human being? Because for me, fear is the worst enemy. It's not a person out there. It's not a building out there. It's not a circumstance. It's fear. And how did you get rid of fear?
Faith.
Faith.
When I went into treatment, they had two big circles on a piece of paper hanging in the window. And one had the line through it, like no smoking kind of thing. And the one with the line through it had faith. The one without the line had fear. The one without the line had faith. So you can't have faith and fear at the same time.
Correct. You can't. And that's a hard concept to accept sometimes.
Yeah. So whenever I would have fear, I would look to my higher power, my God, and I would pull strength from that and know, I've said over and over and over again in the last 18 years, God's gotten me this far, He's not going to drop me on my bottom now.
And that's a good place to wind this program up with. We'll have Lynne back. Meanwhile, thank you so much for being a part of our program. Again, thank you to Carpenter Nevada, LLC, and to Pete's Villa, Basque Deli and Cafe. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next week with a brand new guest. Have a good night.